25 years, the Charleston Area Sports Commission has achieved much success in attracting and creating new sporting events that brings economic value to the Charleston region. Today, I talk one-on-one with Executive Director Kathleen Cartland for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Kathleen Cartland, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's been a while.
Yeah. I want to let the viewers know that we see each other a lot around the visitor center area. Whenever I'm trying to catch the bus to go to, for work and whatever, I know I run into you. And I say that because obviously you're the executive director of the Charleston Area Sports Commission, which you created many years ago as an, as an organization, basically an arm of the Charleston Area Convention and Business Bureau in 1999. And I know it was the region's first agency for developing the sports travel agency. For 24 years, you have achieved much success by attracting and actually creating new sports events for the economic value to actually contribute to this particular region. And I want to know, as we sit here right now, Kathleen, what's new, what's now with the Charleston Area Sports Commission?
I would say that venues have been what has been leading the growth in sports travel or sports tourism. It's been incredible. North Charleston, in the last couple of years, they added some true venues that are obviously for residents, but much more for traveling teams. And they did that with the opening right after COVID, the opening of Aquatic Center. It's in North Charleston, so it's the North Charleston Aquatic Center. They have about 13, 14 meets a year throughout the state. Teams travel. I know they're always looking for regional meets, but those are a long way away. You have to, of course, submit bids a long period of time out. So, but we'll be seeing some of those coming in. And then the North Charleston Athletic Center, with 3 gyms, they're able to host up to 85 basketball teams, youth teams, every weekend. They can also host volleyball. They can host gymnastics. They can host a lot, but I think basketball is where they really found their niche. They've been open for 4 or 5 years. And then not to keep on North Charleston, but they are getting ready to open yet another complex in the old Danny Jones complex area. And it will include a pool and tennis courts. I think you'll see a lot with the tennis courts attracting some USTA events, basketball, and again, it's for residents as well, but we will certainly see some travelers in that building. Once they open, I understand it should be the end of March, 1st of April.
Yes, indeed.
Not to jinx them.
Oh, no, not at all. And we love North Charleston immensely. But let me ask you this, Kathleen. With all of that coming in, with those resources and those particular centers and those sporting events, how many more people do you believe will travel into North Charleston and actually stay in hotels there, for instance?
Oh, wow. Well, each one of them, if you've got 20 kids to a team, that's not including their families that come in with them, and we're talking 80 teams, and you might have 1 or 2 that are local. So you're looking at thousands of teams that are coming in, as well as the swim meets. I actually do provide economic impact studies for the South Carolina swimming group. And I think they're impressed to see after each event that they have, how many people come in. We look at those more on a yearly basis instead of an event each time. But we do them about 13 swim meets a year.
Oh. And I see a lot of them come into the Chick-fil-A where I live, so that's always good to see. But let me ask you, Kathleen, where has the sports tourism industry consistently grown over the past 5 years, in your mind?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with event organizers they're outside of this area. They have tournaments, and I'll use baseball as a perfect example, like a Top Gun Sports, an ACC, they call themselves ACC baseball. They have the events. They look at where they can expand their events. They see a huge hole around the Charleston area, and so that's when they come in and they say, hey, we want to do a 3-day baseball event. I see that you have this Shipyard Park that is unbelievable in terms of views. Family members love it because it gives them something else to look at instead of waiting for their son or daughter. Or they also have softball as well there. But again, they see Charleston as a great place to have sports events, and they try to find a place on their calendar, as well as a place in Charleston or the area. When I say Charleston, I mean Mount Pleasant, I mean Berkeley County, Dorchester, Lawrence. But that's really to see a lot of the growth has been just in events themselves and becoming more of series and stops, tours along the way for different national, regional event organizers.
That's really, really good to hear. So besides Shipwatch Park, Kathleen, what are the other up and coming locations here in the Charleston area that people really want to have events, taking place there?
Yeah. Well, it's not so much up and coming. I guess it's kind of finding out a best kept secret.
Yes.
The best kept secret we have is right in, again, picking on North Charleston, but they have already been doing this for 25 years with their Coliseum and mainly their convention center and their exhibit space. They, from January, the first week in January, they start off with two different volleyball tournaments, and then they go into gymnastics, and then they have dance, and they have all types of different style events that you're more, competitor more so than team events. And they continue to do that throughout the year. They have martial arts, they have wrestling, and these are again youth events. That's not even including all the professional and collegiate events that take place. So it's amazing when you look at our calendar. I keep a track of all the events going on, and I did this for you today, Q. I looked just to count to see what we have for the first quarter, and that's actually the first 4 months, January, February, March, and April. So I've been able to keep track of those, and we have over 800 events. No, I'm sorry, we have over 200 events, meaning that we could easily top out at 800 events just for 24.
Wow.
Last year we finished out with about 600 events.
600.
So, and they're taking place, there's probably 12 to 13 each weekend, mostly weekend.
Yes.
They can be anywhere from James Island. Of course, I was talking a lot about North Charleston, where they have the majority of the events. But we do have quite a few events in James Island, West Ashley, and of course Mount Pleasant as well.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And speaking of those events, big events coming up here in the next few weeks.
Yes.
And that is the Cooper River Bridge Run, which is near and dear to my heart. So from your particular perspective, Kathleen, how do you all prepare for that?
Well, I actually caught an interview that you had with Irv,
yes.
And I know, and I'm on the board, so I do get to be privileged to all the great news about the event growing and how it's ranked nationally and internationally.
Yes.
And that's just amazing how that event just continues to grow. And of course, we, being from the visitor side of things, we're always looking, how can we get more visitors here? And sometimes, unfortunately, we've created a situation where that first week in April, our hotels, they're out there in terms of occupancy is pretty high, and all that does is increase the price. And so sometimes we hear people just say, it's just too expensive to come to Charleston for the bridge run. But then we find, well, maybe that's not the case. If we're seeing 27,000, 30,000 registered, and a lot of them are, again, there's a lot of places you can stay in this area. We have people that stay all the way in Somerville. They stay in Airbnb. They camp. So there's a lot of unique ways of actually coming and travel. And probably the most attractive one is if you have a friend or a relative that lives here. We love them just as much because whatever money they're not spending in a hotel room, they're actually taking their relatives and their friends out to a much bigger dinner. So our restaurants and our attractions are getting a little bit more maybe that weekend than some of the other events because those people are actually spending more money outside of the hotel rooms.
Wow. And when they spend those monies, well, really outside of the hotel rooms, how much is that generating for the area?
Well, that's a good question. And Irv is working on a economic impact study this year at the College of Charleston and their tourism office. So we should find out. I'm not sure the actual schedule of it. I know that they're going to be taking some intercept studies along the way with people coming in for the expo and the actual run itself. So this is a really good time for us to really measure the impact. So they've had them done in the past, and now we're just going to have one right at peak, I think.
Yes, ma'am. And this might be a redundant question, Kathleen, but how much is participant-driven portion of the domestic sports tourism sector is responsible for that direct spending as for instance, closer to the end of 2022?
To the end of 22 or 23?
23. Yes, ma'am.
23. So are you comparing like participants towards spectators?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Because, obviously, the same weekend as the Bridge Run, we have our largest spectator event, which is the WTA All Women's Tennis Tournament. And that brings in the most economic impact for a spectator event.
Wow.
But I would say that 90 to 95% of the events, probably closer to 95% of the events that we have in Charleston are participatory. We don't have a lot of big events like the tennis tournament. But don't get me wrong, we do have a lot of events taking place at the Coliseum. We have wrestling, we have bull riding, we have events like that a lot of people don't necessarily think in terms of people coming in from out of town as spectators, but they do. And they make Charleston a trip. It's like, let's use that as an excuse and go in and spend a weekend.
Wow. That's really amazing. So I want to ask this. How do you compare those numbers from 2023 to, say, 2021?
21, we were just coming out of COVID. We have the numbers. I don't have them in front of me. But I will say that what happened in March of 2020 is when everything shut down. And the interesting thing is 3 months later, we held our first sports event, which was a lacrosse, youth lacrosse, and they dropped from 120 teams to 60 teams. And then after that weekend, we eventually brought on events that we had canceled before that were coming on. So we did lose a lot because of COVID, but it quickly ramped it back up. And of course, the Bridge Run had some issues as well.
Right.
We're fortunate a lot of our events are outdoors. And so a lot of events continued. We are fortunate we're in South Carolina, so our rules weren't as strict as some of the other states. And I will say we even gain events because of North Carolina having stricter rules. And so there's a lot of cities that really benefited at that time. Rock Hill, for one, because of being so close to Charlotte. But I don't think we, after 21, the first major event that we have is a marathon, the Charleston Marathon. And they obviously didn't cancel in 2020, but they did have to cancel in 21. And I think that was kind of the last event that canceled for 21. A lot of numbers were lower, but we did not see any outright cancellations. That was extremely positive for us. I mean, we had volleyball teams come in with masks. We had gymnastics with, events where, family members are sitting watching participation with masks on. But we all know how that ended. So
absolutely,
we're all that much better off.
Yes, absolutely. And how many events did you all gain as a result of these other states being kind of
restricted?
Yeah, exactly right.
It was a little bit more than maybe a handful or so. It was kind of hard to tell because we were getting calls, and then we had a lot of opportunities, but we also had a lot of our venues were at capacity, and so it wasn't so easy to just fit them in. But we did have quite a few, and then because it might have been their first time in the Charleston area, they noticed the hospitality and the great venues that we have, and they said, we want to come back to your area because we did have such a good time where we were treated very well. So you have that residual effect, I guess you would say.
Yeah. So when you look at those numbers, Kathleen, how many of those people actually return to Charleston every year for sporting events?
You know, Q, I wish I knew, but I can give you this. About 90% of our sports events reoccur every year. So again, with age groups, you age out, but at the same time, you might have a brother or a sister to come in younger. But those kind of stats, we just don't have. We don't have names. We don't know in terms of actual addresses. Mostly the road races that we have, when they use an outside company like the Bridge Run, they can tell you names and cities and zip codes. But a lot of the teams, it's hard to tell because it's just information about the team and not the actual people that come. But it is interesting. One of our larger spectators event is the ESPN Events Charleston Classic that we have in November, where we have 8 visiting teams. They come in the weekend before Thanksgiving. And, that's where we are.
You're right around the corner.
go Cougs tonight. They got to get it done.
Exactly.
But I will see people all the time to be in our visitor center picking up information, and I'll ask them what team are they here representing, and they're not. They say they're not. That they've been here before. They had a fabulous time, and they just wanted to come back to Charleston for that great weekend and root all the teams on, but just to have a chance to be here for 4 or 5 days. And that is one of our top 3 events that we do host a year, or is hosted here.
Yeah.
And it's coming back strong. It'll be 16 years this November.
Wow. Long time there. Wow. Obviously, all of these events that you just mentioned, Kathleen, generates a lot of money for the Charleston area. How have you and your team actually identified a dedicated funding source to enrich Charleston area sports program and actually for the venue inventory?
Well, it would not fall under the Sports Commission. But what does fall under that is having an advisory board that takes a look at what needs we have, and then to work with community leaders in providing them with information they need to make decisions as far as adding new venues. So we're not directly involved by any means in terms of the funding part of it. And I hear all the time, I wish we had more venues, but I wish we had one for rugby and one for lacrosse. There's so many sports that we would have much more in terms of competitions if we did have, because we have some really strong support groups, but we just don't have the fields. We just don't have the gyms. We just don't have them. We are very much lacking compared to other cities, municipalities in our state. We have a state organization, and we meet on a regular basis, and it's amazing to see what other cities have done. But we do a lot with our water, which is, which is a venue itself that a lot of people don't, think about. But if you count all the fishing, the sailing, all those events, we even have stand-up paddleboard. There's probably about 20 sports that actually take place. Surfing, obviously. If you add those up, that makes up a big portion of the events we have, and they're not actually being held at a structured venue, indoor, outdoor.
What exactly is Charleston lacking as far as venues?
I would say for the most part, ball fields. And I say ball fields as in softball, baseball. Again, it could be lacrosse. It could be football. And again, it just takes a group we have them here. We just don't have them. We're not meeting the demand of other, I mentioned the event organizers that come into the shipyard park, like ACC baseball or Top Gun. Those event organizers can go to a Florence or to a Rock Hill and be in a North Myrtle Beach, to have over 10, 15 fields all in one location. So it makes more sense for them to go to one of these locations than come to Charleston and only have 5 fields at Shipyard, and then they have to look at 3 fields over Mount Pleasant, another 2 in Somerville, and there's just a lot of travel. So we've seen that a lot in softball. They won't even consider a bid for an event unless you have a certain number of fields all within the same complex. But basketball is getting to be the same way. They have 5 gyms all in one location. And, USTA and some of their events, they've always been that way too, where they need to have an exact number for doubles and for singles. But those events have even grown to be so big where they might look to have 30 courts in one location. We don't have 30 courts in one location. We can marry up
Right.
a couple of facilities, but we just don't have that. But there are, in the Southeast, there are quite a few places that do.
So, in the past, Kathleen, what venues have you all been able to marry up as far as these events?
So I would say it's incredible some of the what the local people can do, like a Diamond Devil is working with all what they have to work with the universities, even Charleston Southern, College of Charleston, and then Patriots Point Youth. So they have a lot of events that have worked out very well for them because they've been in the area, they know the people to work with, they know how to be flexible in terms of the scheduling, that kind of thing. And I mentioned basketball at the North Charleston Athletic Center. They've been very good about introducing those event organizers from outside to local private schools. A perfect example is the Carolina Invitational that someone I know Everett German, who's actually our tournament director for that, and he can have up to 156 teams in 15 high school gyms. That's a lot. That's a lot to handle, and if you don't know how to handle that, then that's just a recipe for disaster. But he's very successful at what he does, and that's because he knows how to do it. But you have to marry up. We don't have basketball facilities. For instance, the one in Rock Hill has 10 basketball courts lined up one after another. We have nothing in this area that could even resemble anything like that.
How do you all win in the end, Kathleen, without all of these resources?
Oh, destination is number one. That's how we win. It's all about Charleston. I mean, people really want to come here and enjoy. You'll have more family members to attend. You'll have, again, it doesn't matter what time of year. Everett's event is between Christmas and New Year's, and he has a waiting list, for the teams, the high school girls and boys to come in. So it really has to do with Charleston. We might lose out on events because our facilities are not as brand new as some other areas, but eventually that group might grow and they say, well, the next place to grow would be in Charleston.
You've been around Charleston for a long time. I was born and raised here. Obviously, as we know, this particular area is growing a lot. So how do you and the Charleston Area Sports Commission grow with that growth?
Just, a lot of it is keeping up with the events that come in and then reaching out to them and see what they need. Hotels, obviously, we mentioned, that's a big part of it. And we have new hotels. So we have a wonderful group of, as you know, with the Visitor Bureau, hotels that we work with. And there's a lot of new ones that come online. And so we just need to make sure that they're hooked up with the events that are already taking place so that everybody will be a success. They'll be a success. The hotel will be along, with the event. But I think it's just actually, you mentioned the word inventory a couple times. Not only do we need to know the venue inventory, we need to know the hotel inventory, we need to know the restaurant inventory, we need to know the catering inventory. So we needed to know all the support services that are out there when an event comes, and simply, to be a central agency, they can reach out and say, these are some things that we need. And hopefully we can help them.
Yes, absolutely. I'm probably going ahead of myself, Kathleen, but what do these hotels and catering businesses need from you all right now?
From us, we just, again, try to help them out, letting them know what to expect, what's coming into town. Because these are events that are, been coming here every year. For many, as I mentioned, the basketball tournament, 16 years. And many, a lot longer if you look at the bridge run, 47 years. So it's just to know that we're there for them, and things change. So they need to know in terms of the hotels, and it's just a never ending process of keeping up with, as you can imagine, 15 events a weekend, and that doesn't really even include if the College of Charleston is playing one team, or if there's a tennis match over at the Citadel. We do count some of the tournaments they have, but we don't count the individual games, and they all include a team coming in needing 12 to 15 rooms, hotel rooms, and so hotels would love to have the large tournament or the large event like the bridge run. But I think what keeps them going is every weekend they know that they're going to get 15, 20, 40 rooms associated with either a college, university, or a high school youth group.
Wow, that's amazing. And I want to go back to what you mentioned earlier about obviously the communities, but I want to know, what is your approach to actually, who are the community stakeholders that you can actually work with through the CVB in order to develop tourism-driven assets that can actually deliver upon the sports tourism mission that you all have on a recurring basis?
Well, we have the municipalities, of course. So within each municipality, you have their facilities, and obviously the events use their facilities quite a bit. You have private ownership. Carolina Ice Palace is privately owned. You've got municipalities that have a lot to do with, like, for instance, the Coliseum. As I mentioned, Convention Center. They're very involved. They own it, but they actually have a management group that they're very involved with. So a lot of it is making sure that everybody knows who to get in contact with. So if there is an issue that doesn't fit in a certain location, is there another location that can work just as nicely? There's the Somerville has a new conference center. It's not anywhere the size of a convention center, but on their weekends, they do have judiciary, they do have MMA, they have some gymnastics, dance. So even though it's not the size, but they might be a better fit for an event that calls the Coliseum, and they say, look, you're not as big. I think that would need this much space, but we do have other venues that might fit the purpose that you have.
Wow. This might be a silly question and probably a redundant question, Kathleen, but how many more venues do you need now to keep up with that growth that's coming in here?
Well, it's just a matter of, we could use so much. We could use so many more facilities. So it's one of those huge wish lists, But I think that, I hate that old cliche, if you build it, they will come. But it is so true in sports. And I didn't want to say it. You made me say it. But it is so true. And we've seen it.
Yes.
We've seen it again. I opened up with the example with North Charleston and those two facilities, and they weren't out, they weren't hurting trying to find events to come in. Those, they worked hand in hand to get those events, and now they're full every weekend. Or if they're not, if they're not available for the community, they're offering a sports travel event.
Wow. And what exactly is on your wish list for the Sports Commission in the Charleston area?
Oh, I would say another huge ball field complex, for soccer, baseball. I would say that would really serve, I think, kind of even centrally located. If you're only 20, 30 minutes away from anywhere. We are a big community, but we're small in terms of geographic. And if there's no traffic issues, you can pretty much move from venue to venue within 20, 30 minutes. But I think an outdoor facility, as well as an indoor facility to do more basketball. We keep hearing rumors of this and that, and private companies are doing this, but we don't have anything concrete, no pun intended. So, it would be nice if if there were more indoor and outdoor facilities
And
for the youth.
yes, ma'am. And I want to actually this too, Kathleen. What is you and your team's approach to developing a gap analysis of those community-wide efforts and recommendations for the sports and events commission structure that could actually drive increased tourism to the market through sports?
Yeah. Well, I think it all comes down to land availability. Land is expensive, and youth events are not going to be bringing in the same amount of money that the building behind you. Perfect example is what happened to Blackball Stadium.
Right.
Again, that was sold for condos and retail space, and that just happened. So, although you've got other areas, land's a little bit, it's not as expensive in Rock Hill, and I mentioned those other cities where there's more of it. I mean, we just don't have the land here that somebody is going to come in and develop if they're not going to be able to make a return on investment that they could with something else in that same location. Unfortunately, that's that's the situation. But we can always show them and show what their needs are, and what, if we did have it, what we feel like we could actually bring in for the area, and what the economic impact would be as well.
Absolutely. What has been Charleston's return on investment when it comes to sports?
I could see 20-1. I mean, in terms of, it just all depends. If there's a lot of our event organizers are local, so we're not paying money for them, but and their information is private. But I would say on events that we've actually put a bid in for in the past, and we've actually raised money. And I mentioned, you've got the College of Charleston, but we did that for the Colonial, the same tournament that's going on in DC. We did it for 3 years. And then before that, the College of Charleston, they were in the Southern Conference, and we did it for 6 years at the Coliseum. And those were two that we specifically saw return on investment. It was about 20-1, because we knew how much money we had put into it. And then we did the economic impact, and we saw where, a certain amount of money put in. If the economic impact was even close, then it could be a, 10, 15-1 return on investment.
Brings me to my last question for you, Kathleen. What's your approach to partnering with local promoters to build creative events that will actually call the Charleston area home long into the future, and that will not be subject to an RFP process with new sports commissions competitors?
Such a hot button. I love it. Yes. Oh my gosh. We would be so interested. We've just had a board meeting talking about that same thing. And to look at needs, and to look at things that we don't have. And I love saying this too, but it's location, location, location. And when I say that, I'm talking about on the calendar. Where is it located on the calendar? 20-some years ago, we had a huge Thanksgiving soccer tournament over Thanksgiving weekend, and we don't have anything like that. Hotels would be so open to that. Some be easier to get filled, So when we're looking at partnering, or probably not creating, but partnering, or if we had somebody that came in and said, yes, this is what we're thinking, what do you think? Then we would have open arms for that group. We would be willing to help. And I know our state organization has a sports grant that is designed just for those situations where somebody wants to come in and bring a new event that would not be held anywhere else in the state. And so money is available. It's matching money, but it's available. And so, things like that we always be looking at. Always.
And what is the biggest difference from 20 years ago to right now when you think of sports here in Charleston?
Well, it's turned 180 degrees, because it used to be where, again, now event organizers come to you and they ask you for $100,000. Where before it's like, can we come to your city? We'll pay you. But event organizers, they see that they have a asset, and they want you to pay for that asset. And we don't do a lot of that, let's just say, but other cities do. They might, pay an event organizer to set up and to be here. It's really hard for us because we have so many events. Again, we have 600, 800 events a year. How do I make a decision to give this group money versus another group? There are some key things. That we would look at in terms of location and location. But it's really hard for us to provide the funding that a lot of them ask for. But it seems like, again, as we go back to it being a destination, sometimes that wins over cash, everything else, because they know they're going to have a better attendance.
Yes.
They're going to have more spectators if that's the case. So better weather,
Yes.
hopefully, unlike last weekend.
Right. Still recovering from that. And what's the typical spending for these people who want to come in and actually do business with Charleston?
Spending as far as how much they might ask us to
Yes,
give
ma'am.
them. Yeah, it could be as small as $10,000 for a USTA event to one that might not even be proven to even be a success yet, but they need to see money because they haven't had any city to help them. And a lot of times it's just if it's first couple years, they're not going to make money, and so they need a little help. It can take 3 years before an event can make money. It's just build up the clientele and develop the relationships and all. So it varies. We had back a while ago, Rock and Roll Marathon wanted $500,000. We passed them up.
Yikes. Yeah, I can understand that. Oof. Well,
But if it's a USTA, it's $10,000. That might be a little bit more doable. And if they have a record of knowing how many tennis players will be coming for a specific tournament, so there's a little bit more proof, and we know the type of spending that they do and what family members they might bring, and so we know a little bit more about the people that are coming in than we have somebody for the first time saying this is, can you think of? There's a lot of them, a lot of new ones out there. Spike ball.
yes.
I know you did an interview with Spike ball.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example. Spike ball. It's like you have there's no proof that that's going to be a success.
Yes.
Of course it is. But at the time,
Right.
they were looking for money, and there's no proof. And now that's a very successful event. But it's interesting. They do that indoors and not
Right.
where you think we have lots of beaches. They don't want to do it on our beach. They want to do it indoors.
Interesting.
or either football field,
Right.
but
Right.
not on the beach.
On the beach. Interesting. Well, Kathleen Cartland with the Charleston Area Sports Commission, thank you for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Oh, it was so nice to visit with you again, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
You do a
I'll
lot
see-
for us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, and I'll see you around town.
I will.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.